What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires, and today is the classic story of why you don't leave everything to the last minute, you don't do your homework the night before, and you study for a test in advance. As it turns out, at least according to one industry insider, in spite of all of the stuff we've been hearing about Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man 4 and Sony might be in real trouble, and it has everything to do with the contract they signed with Marvel, the rights pertaining to Spider-Man, and the contractual agreement that limits the amount of time they have to make the next Spider-Man movie. And let me tell you, if there is any truth to the trusted industry insider source today, the same guy who claimed that Robert Downey Jr. would be coming back as Dr. Doom, if there's any truth to this report, Sony might actually lose the rights to Spider-Man. And say what you want about mitigating circumstances and everybody being on the same page, it really doesn't matter, because these contracts are ironclad and set in stone, especially for something as expensive as the Spider-Man IP. And again, if there's any truth to this report, Sony may be headed straight into that scenario. We're breaking it all down, this latest update to Spider-Man 4 not being anywhere close to its production track record and what it ultimately means for Marvel getting the rights back to Spider-Man. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button, we do daily Marvel content at the channel. That's all we do. So if that sort of thing's for you, hit the sub button, leave a comment down below. That will automatically enter you to win our ongoing PS5 giveaway. The next one is right around the corner for What If Season 3. Again, all you got to do, be a sub, leave a comment if you want, stick around to the end of the video. We get into all the giveaway stuff again there. Okay, so if you haven't been keeping up with channels like mine, this is where we stand currently with Spider-Man 4 and before today's bombshell revelation. It's going to be released in summer of 2026. Some dates in July have been thrown around. After Avengers Doomsday is released, but before Avengers Secret Wars, it will not be a prequel. The film is said to go into production early next year. That's confirmed by Sony, and according to industry insider Daniel RBK, it was quite the trick to figure out how Tom Holland would film on both Spider-Man 4 and Avengers Doomsday, with huge obligations in both movies. But again, according to the same source, Daniel RPK, those logistics were said to have been worked out between the two studios, and Tom Holland would go directly from filming on Doomsday to Spider-Man 4 in back-to-back productions next year. That's where we pick up today with the huge report from none other than Jeff Sneider. This is the same industry insider who pegged Robert Downey Jr. returning as Dr. Doom 2 months before that was officially announced. So take that as you will, but his track record is proven. He had to say this about Spider-Man 4. I keep hearing that filming for the MCU Spider-Man 4 may have been pushed to like the end of 2025, early 2026. So I don't see a world where it makes that release in 2026 in the summer. It may be pushed back some. Now, pushed back and delays, these are words we are very familiar with as Marvel fans when it comes to the MCU release slate, but this is where Sony all of a sudden is probably headed straight into crisis mode, and this is why. Their contract with Marvel that allows them to keep the rights to live-action Spider-Man has some pretty hefty stipulations for how that IP is supposed to be used, more specifically, how often. They have to start production on Spider-Man films 3 years and 9 months after the release of the previous live-action film, and they have to release Spider-Man films every 5 years and 9 months. Where that leaves Sony right now, well, since Spider-Man No Way Home came out in December 2021, they have to start filming, and on Spider-Man 4 by September 17th, 2025. Did you note the update from Jeff Sneider? He said that production might even be pushed back to the beginning of 2026. And this is a contractual stipulation. They missed these deadlines, and those rights bounce back to Marvel, no questions. Now, the release date has to be September 17th, 2027. That's 2 years later, and I don't think Sony is as worried about that, because as long as they start, 2 years is more than enough time to get one of these films done. But the problem remains that as of right now, and according to this industry insider update, they might not be ready to get the ball rolling, especially when we're hearing from Tom Holland, and now less than a year away, that they're only on the first draft of the script and it needs a lot of work. Now, this is assuming everything goes perfectly and according to plan, and that the reshoots for Avengers Doomsday or the shooting on Secret Wars at the beginning of 2026 don't somehow complicate all of this and make it maybe even in some cases impossible. And while there are are workarounds for Sony, for instance, to start shooting on the film, even if Tom Holland's not ready, just spending money to get other scenes done, etc. The fact remains that over the last half decade, we've seen 2 instances where it hasn't really had anything to do with what the studios want or their logistics. There's just major delays in the film industry, one of them because of a pandemic, the other because of an actors and a writers strike that basically took up an entire year. So even though there may be some tactics that Sony can implement, like I said, just starting to shoot on Spider-Man 4 by that given date, whether Tom Holland's on set or not, and then taking as long as you need if Tom Holland has to keep going to shoot on the Avengers films, there are other outside factors here that could cause a major catastrophe for the rights over at Sony if one of these major delays and say outside of the studio's control were to pop up. Also, not to mention that they're obviously writing this narrative. This whole film has to fit in the context of where the MCU is at the time in between those 2 Avengers films, and it really won't make a lot of sense for Sony to be releasing a Spider-Man in say late 2027 towards that September release date if Avengers Secret Wars has already ended and this is somehow some lame prequel that's wedged between them, or even worse, has to be rewritten completely last minute because it doesn't fit anymore and we end up getting some ancillary story that wasn't originally meant to be Spider-Man 4, with them putting as much time as they are now into that film. And look, basically the Spider-Man 4 news started breaking out of nowhere this year and has been pretty relentless, but in the couple of years leading up to this, we haven't heard anything really about what's going on behind the scenes, really not a lot to fill in the blanks as far as what Sony has been up to, and you could say that there are a ton of factors that go into this. They have to work with Marvel on this release, they have to work around Marvel's release slate, again the delays, and then of course they have to re-sign Tom Holland and the other talent, but I mean, this is some normal stuff that Hollywood studios have to do anyway, and so it really makes you wonder and scratch your head why it took Sony this long to even try to get traction and why we're working on this script now. You could have been working on this Spider-Man script and had that put into development years ago so that by the time we got around to this year, the script was something you didn't have to worry about anymore. And you wonder when you hear from Jeff Snyder that they're pressing these productions the way that they are, if this has more to do with the MCU needing their time and breath with Tom Holland to get their shooting done, or this has more to do with the fact that Sony doesn't have their ducks in a row, including no script yet, and they're trying to work it all out and at the last minute. And as I said at the beginning of the prologue, this is why you don't do that, because if something comes out of left field now and derails the movie industry for any amount of time, well then the rights from Sony then the rights for Spider-Man are going to bounce back from Sony to Disney and Marvel, where we all want them in the first place, and Sony's got to know that if that scenario even became a real option, that they wouldn't have the fans in their corner. We would all be hoping and praying that whatever delay popped up would last long enough that this would come to fruition. Also, it doesn't make sense from Sony's standpoint as far as the size of their studio when someone like Disney or Marvel or much bigger movie studios are juggling a lot of moving pieces. Sony is a very small movie studio by comparison. They are just one subsidiary, one wing of a bigger company that's Sony that focuses on a ton of stuff like electronics and etc. If they lost the Spider-Man IP, I don't want to say that their studio would be completely worthless, but they aren't cranking out movies like a lot of other film studios. For instance, outside of say Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, and Bad Boys, I can't think of another movie that they released this year. Now, as a final thought, I do want to bring up this. We just covered a report here at the channel in the last, say, 3 months that said that Sony would actually look to work with Marvel even more closely in the future of the MCU and after Avengers Secret Wars, when we suspect there's going to be this soft reboot. And what this meant twofold was that we would end up not getting movies like Madam Web, Morbius, and Kraven that were isolated on an island, not only outside of the MCU, but basically without a Spider-Man and without a Spider-Verse. And it was said to solve the stickiest part of the sharing agreement with the characters, where apparently if Sony used a villain, Marvel Studios wasn't allowed to use them, and there were limits as far as what sort of MCU involvement the Sony films could have. This report stated that Sony and Marvel would work together, put all the characters in the same place the way we want them, but now hearing the situation the rights are in, you have to wonder if this just simply isn't Sony maybe capitulating, looking down the road saying we may be in real trouble, let's just do what's in the best interest of the Spider-Man IP and Marvel in the first place, and maybe we can avoid all that. But contracts are contracts, and for especially something as expensive, I don't even know what the dollar amount for Spider-Man's IP would be now with the success of Spider-Man No Way Home. and sort of recanonizing the old brands as well to turn it into one big live action trio Spider-Man super brand, you have to imagine at this point, it's just such a high number that if there was a chance that Disney and Marvel could get this back basically for free because Sony stubs their toe, there's no way they wouldn't go after it. You guys let me know all your thoughts down below though. What is Sony doing? Why have they left it to the last minute? And how crazy would it be if Sony was the reason they lost the rights? I'm all ears as always. Quickly, let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. Alright, the next PS5 giveaway is for the What If finale in about a month or so. We're also going to give away some other stuff in December. Super simple to be entered to win any of them. All the same rules will always apply. Gotta be a sub, so hit the sub button, leave a comment down below, and because it's truly random, the more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on, and as always, if you liked today's video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. Find me over on Instagram and Twitter at I'mFires. You can also find me on all platforms wherever you listen to original music under the name All Fires. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.